Imagine a man who once celebrated the victories of others, a man who could see his friends succeed and feel genuine joy, a man who worked quietly, honestly, patiently, believing that effort, character, and time would eventually reward him. Now imagine watching that same man slowly change. At first, the change is almost invisible. It begins with a glance at someone else's life, someone else's success, someone else's recognition. Perhaps a colleague receives the promotion he wanted. Perhaps a friend launches a business that begins to grow faster than his own. Perhaps someone younger, less experienced, less deserving appears to move ahead. And something subtle shifts inside him. A quiet voice whispers a question that has poisoned more hearts than any external enemy ever could. Why not me? That question, left unanswered, begins a slow transformation. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. Because comparison is one of the most dangerous habits a human mind can form. It disguises itself as awareness. It pretends to be motivation. It whispers that it is simply observing the world fairly. But comparison rarely produces fairness. It produces distortion. And when the mind begins measuring itself constantly against others, something remarkable and tragic begins to happen. Good people start becoming bitter, not because they were born bitter, not because they lack kindness, but because comparison quietly turns gratitude into resentment. Think about the moment a young entrepreneur begins his journey. In the beginning, his energy is pure. He studies. He works late into the night. He dreams about building something meaningful. Every small improvement feels like progress. Every lesson feels like growth. But then one day, he opens a screen. He sees someone announcing their new success, another posting about their new car, another celebrating their rapid rise. Suddenly, the work he was proud of yesterday feels small. Suddenly, the progress that once excited him feels insignificant. And this is the moment where the poison begins to spread, because the mind does something dangerous when it compares. It does not simply observe, it judges, and the judgment is almost always unfair. You compare your struggles to someone else's highlight, your unfinished chapter to someone else's final result, your effort to someone else's outcome. You see their victory, but you do not see their doubts. You do not see their sleepless nights. You do not see their failures that came before that moment. And yet your mind draws a conclusion anyway. They are ahead. Once that idea settles into the mind, comparison becomes a habit. The mind starts scanning the world not for opportunity, but for evidence of inequality. Every success becomes a threat. Every achievement becomes a reminder of what you have not yet achieved. And slowly, the heart that once admired others begins to harden. Not intentionally, but gradually. Comparison is a thief. It steals peace. It steals gratitude. It steals focus. The tragedy is that most people never notice the exact moment when admiration transforms into envy. Envy does not arrive loudly, it creeps. First, it is a small irritation when someone succeeds. Then it becomes skepticism. Maybe they got lucky. Then it becomes suspicion. They must have had help. Then it becomes quiet resentment. They don't deserve it. And finally, if left unchecked, envy becomes something darker. The mind begins to hope for the fall of others, not openly, but secretly. The same person who once wished others success now watches with curiosity, waiting for signs of failure. Because comparison has done its work. It has shifted the mind away from creation and toward competition, away from building and toward measuring. And this is how good people become toxic, not through cruelty, but through corrosion, a slow corrosion of perspective. There is a powerful truth that very few people ever realize. The moment you begin comparing your life constantly to others, you stop building your own. Your energy moves away from progress and toward observation. Your focus leaves your purpose and attaches itself to someone else's path. Imagine a craftsman building a cathedral, stone by stone, year by year. Now imagine that every few minutes he stops to look across the field at another craftsman building a different cathedral. Every glance weakens his concentration. Every comparison interrupts his rhythm. Soon he is no longer focused on the beauty of his own work. He is measuring heights, counting towers, judging speed. Eventually, frustration replaces pride, and the cathedral he once loved building becomes a burden. That is what comparison does to the human spirit. It turns builders into spectators. Think about the greatest builders of history, the inventors, the industrialists, the visionaries. They lived in a state of deep internal focus. Thomas Edison did not spend his nights wondering who else had built a better laboratory. Henry Ford did not obsess over every carriage manufacturer in the country. They were too busy building something that did not yet exist. Their attention was fixed on possibility, not rivalry. They understood a fundamental law of achievement. Energy flows where attention goes. If your attention goes toward comparison, your energy fuels insecurity. But if your attention goes toward creation, your energy fuels progress. And this is why comparison can destroy even talented people. A person can possess intelligence, discipline, and ambition. But if their mind becomes trapped in comparison, their power begins to leak away. Every jealous thought drains momentum. Every resentful observation steals clarity. Soon, the person no longer sees their own path clearly. They see only obstacles. They see only unfairness. They see only the progress of others. At that moment, bitterness becomes a constant companion. But here is the most dangerous illusion comparison creates. It convinces people that someone else's success has somehow stolen their opportunity, that the world has limited room for achievement, that another person's rise must mean their fall. This is a lie, a destructive lie. Success is not a single ladder that everyone is climbing. It is an open field, infinite directions, infinite possibilities. But the mind trapped in comparison cannot see the open field. It sees only the ladder. And so it becomes obsessed with who is higher. This obsession creates frustration. Frustration creates resentment. Resentment creates toxicity. And the tragedy is that the person believes the problem is outside of them. They blame the system. They blame the people ahead. They blame luck. They blame unfair advantages. But rarely do they realize the real enemy, the habit of comparison itself. The moment you stop comparing your journey to the journeys of others, something extraordinary happens. Your vision clears. Your mind returns to its natural state of creativity. You begin to see opportunities that comparison once blinded you to. You start asking better questions. Instead of asking, why are they ahead, you ask, what can I build? Instead of asking, what do they have, you ask, what can I become? And this shift changes everything, because the mind that creates will always outrun the mind that compares. The mind that builds will always surpass the mind that measures. The mind that focuses inward will always develop more power than the mind obsessed with external ranking. This is not just philosophy. It is psychological reality. Human attention is limited. Where you place it determines the direction of your life. A mind focused on jealousy cannot focus on mastery. A mind focused on resentment cannot focus on growth. A mind focused on comparison cannot focus on vision. And vision is the true engine of achievement. Vision is what separates the builder from the critic. Vision is what turns an ordinary person into a force of creation. Vision is what allows a person to endure years of effort without losing faith. But vision requires mental space. It requires attention, and comparison steals that space. It fills the mind with noise, the noise of other people's lives, the noise of rankings, the noise of imagined unfairness. And when the mind is filled with noise, purpose becomes difficult to hear. That is why the most successful individuals in history have always developed a powerful internal discipline. They guard their attention. They choose what deserves their focus. They understand that the mind is a garden. If you allow weeds to grow freely, they will choke every seed of possibility. Comparison is one of the most aggressive weeds. It spreads quickly. It feeds on insecurity. It thrives in environments where people constantly observe the lives of others. But a disciplined mind pulls that weed out the moment it appears, not by ignoring reality, but by returning attention to the only place where power exists, your own path, your own growth, your own potential. The truth is simple but difficult. You cannot control the speed of someone else's journey. You cannot control the opportunities someone else receives. You cannot control who rises quickly and who rises slowly. But you can control the direction of your attention. And that control determines everything. Because the moment you reclaim your focus from comparison, your life begins to change. Your mind becomes quieter. Your work becomes deeper. Your progress becomes more consistent. You stop chasing approval and start chasing mastery. And mastery always produces results that comparison never will. So the question becomes clear. Will you spend your energy measuring other people's lives, or will you spend your energy building your own? Because the world does not reward the best observers. It rewards the best creators. And the moment you stop comparing, you start becoming dangerous in the best possible way. Dangerous with clarity, dangerous with focus, dangerous with purpose. And that is the moment when the toxic effects of comparison finally lose their power. Because the mind that is busy building a future has no time left to envy someone else's present. And when a person finally understands this, something profound begins to happen inside them. They start seeing the world differently. They begin to realize that comparison was never simply a harmless habit. It was a silent distraction, one that quietly redirected their attention away from the most important task any human being can undertake, the construction of their own life. Because the truth is this: every great achievement in history began with a mind that refused to look sideways. It looked forward, forward into uncertainty, forward into possibility, forward into territory that had not yet been explored. The builder of a great enterprise does not rise by measuring himself against the noise of the crowd. He rises by building something that the crowd cannot yet imagine. But comparison trains the mind to become a spectator. It turns creative energy into restless observation. It replaces vision with judgment. It makes a person feel constantly behind, constantly threatened, constantly dissatisfied. And a dissatisfied mind is a dangerous place to live. Not because dissatisfaction itself is wrong, but because when dissatisfaction is fed by comparison, it becomes corrosive. Instead of asking, "How can I grow?" the mind asks, "Why are they ahead?" Instead of asking, "What must I build?" the mind asks, "Why do they have more?" These questions lead nowhere. They produce no innovation. They produce no discipline. They produce no courage. They simply create emotional storms that drain a person's strength. And while that storm is raging, time continues moving forward. Opportunities appear and disappear. Years pass. potential quietly fades, not because the person lacked talent, but because their attention was pointed in the wrong direction. The great paradox of success is that the people who achieve the most rarely spend much time thinking about what others are doing. They are too occupied with their own construction. Imagine a sculptor standing before a massive block of marble. He does not spend his days walking through galleries comparing his unfinished statue to the completed masterpieces of others. If he did, he would become paralyzed. Instead, he picks up the chisel. He studies the stone. He focuses on the next strike, and then the next, and then the next. Great lives are built exactly the same way. One decision, one improvement, one disciplined action at a time. The person who becomes extraordinary is rarely the one who begins with the most advantages. More often, it is the one who develops the strongest focus. Focus is the ability to keep your mind fixed on your own work while the world tries to pull your attention everywhere else. It is the refusal to measure your progress by someone else's clock. It is the discipline to understand that every individual path unfolds at its own pace. Some seeds sprout in days. Others take years before the first green shoot appears above the soil. But both carry life. Both carry potential. Both carry the ability to grow into something magnificent if they are given time and attention. Comparison destroys this patience. It demands instant results. It demands visible progress. It demands proof that you are not falling behind. But greatness does not respond to demands. It responds to persistence. It responds to belief. It responds to the quiet determination of someone who continues building long after the crowd has grown distracted. History is filled with individuals who worked in obscurity for years before their work finally revealed its value. Inventors who failed hundreds of times before their discoveries changed the world. Writers who were rejected repeatedly before their ideas shaped generations. Entrepreneurs who spent years refining their vision before the market finally recognized it. If these people had lived inside the prison of comparison, they would have quit long before their breakthrough arrived. But they refused to measure themselves against the temporary victories of others. They measured themselves against their own potential, and that is the only measurement that leads to greatness. The question you must ask yourself is simple but powerful. Where is your attention going? Is it going toward the endless scoreboard of other people's lives? Or is it going toward the quiet construction of your own future? Because attention is not just awareness. Attention is fuel. Whatever receives your attention receives your energy, and whatever receives your energy begins to grow. Feed comparison and envy grows. Feed resentment and bitterness grows. Feed discipline and power grows. Feed purpose and direction grows. Feed vision and possibility grows. The mind cannot cultivate everything at once. It becomes what it repeatedly focuses on. So if you want to reclaim the best parts of yourself, the kindness, the ambition, the creativity, the strength, you must protect your attention like a precious resource. Guard it, direct it, use it deliberately. Refuse to allow the achievements of others to become distractions from your own path. Instead, let them become reminders of what is possible. Someone else's success is not evidence that the world has less opportunity for you. It is evidence that achievement exists. It proves that progress can happen. It shows that human beings are capable of remarkable transformation. And if another person can rise, so can you. But not through comparison, through construction, through the daily decision to return your attention to the work that matters, through the courage to continue building even when progress feels slow, through the discipline to trust your own pace. Because the person who masters their focus eventually masters their life. They stop reacting, they start creating. They stop measuring, they start building. And when that shift happens, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Peace returns, confidence returns, energy returns. The mind that once felt threatened by the success of others becomes free again, free to learn, free to grow, free to imagine a future that is not limited by comparison. This is the transformation that separates those who remain stuck in bitterness from those who rise into possibility. One group spends their lives watching the progress of others. The other spends their lives building something worth watching. And the difference between them is not talent. It is not luck. It is not opportunity. It is focus. So release the habit of comparison. Let it fall away like an old weight that no longer serves you. Return your attention to your vision. Return your energy to your purpose. Return your mind to the work that only you can do. Because the world does not need another spectator standing on the sidelines measuring everyone else's journey. It needs builders, creators, individuals who are too focused on their own path to be distracted by the noise of comparison. And the moment you fully commit to building your own life instead of measuring someone else's, you stop becoming toxic. You start becoming powerful. And a focused, purposeful, disciplined mind is one of the most unstoppable forces the world has ever known.